What's up guys, and welcome to my first impressions on Archer. It's been roughly 2 days since Archer did release as I am uploading this video, and I've done practically nothing but use him more than Saber actually, because he's just that much more fun for me, and I do generally think I have my first impressions of what I do think about him. With that being said, let's dive straight in. So just like usual with my other first impression videos, first we can talk about the build up and all that stuff. So Fate collab already announced, was very hyped. I already said this in my Saber first impressions. I was hyped that an anime that I really like and a series that I really love was actually going to be getting a collab with the game I play really often. I'm not the biggest Unlimited Blade Works fan. I'm not the biggest Saber fan, but I'm a lot more of a Archer fan than I am of a Saber fan. Archer is still not by means anywhere near my favorite, but he is still a character I do genuinely like. Sometimes I kind of forget how he's actually like because I'm so F-Go versed that I kind of forgot this is actually how he acts in Unlimited Blade Works. You know, if you know, you know. Anyway, so once the beta started for them, I finally saw that he was going to be another single target DPS, and if you guys don't know this about me, I am more likely to like a single target DPS way more than any AoE DPS. I love single target characters, and I will always love single target characters. And so the fact he was going to be a single target character was super hyped. I still use Fei Chao to this day. I still use Buto to this day sometimes. I love my single target characters, and I will try to use them as long as possible. So seeing how the free unit was going to be single target gave me Ratio vibes. I still am kind of scared that eventually he's going to get, kind of kicked off relatively quickly. Ratio did last a little while until he did get, kind of replaced in that niche. Still is good. You still can use him, but, I'll get more on that later. But yeah, we were going to get a free Archer once they announced that he was going to be absolutely free. I was so excited. Since I think by the time they announced that he was free, we already generally had an idea on how his kit was going to work. So I was like, yes, finally, I'm going to be able to experiment with another single target character. I'm just going to have to hope that they make the kit good. And then, with the stuff released, it sounded like you were able to, multiply fire skills back to back to back. And that sounded really cool. It consumed a lot of skill points. And so it seemed like you really needed a lot of front point SP. What did that mean? The revival of Sparkle. Sparkle is a character I did invest on her original banner, and it did honestly benefit me because I still used her actively even after Sunday, even after Robin, all that stuff. But to finally see she was going to be the best for a team, especially for someone that I'm going to use often, because I really didn't use Donning that much when Sparkle released, finally that she was going to be best on a team and actually to stay the best, better than every other option. I was finally going to have that DPS that utilizes her kit properly. So we saw that Archer was going to be this overcapping skill point DPS. You're able to constantly fire skills, it consumes a lot of them. His ultimate does insane amount of damage. He also has a bit of utility in the form of a follow-up attack to give more skill points back. And yeah, then it completely turned out you didn't even want to build any speed on him anyway. So yeah, he was just a perfect version to run with Sparkle. Now the question is if he was actually going to perform well in content and if his damage actually was really solid. Seemed like he had a bit of ramp up, so it kind of felt a bit iffy going on. So if it started really low, it was going to be a problem still because you don't want to start low. Usually these characters do have a ramp up time. Buto still has to build up his pocket trick shots. Fei Chao is less of a build up, but you mainly just need to activate Robin ult and then she's at her fullest. So him seeming like he needed a bit of build up was going to be a bit iffy, but we had to see. I also don't think Archer got that many changes throughout his beta, so there was just some multiplier stuff. I know he did get like a 200% nerf to his ultimate. Well, it used to be 1200% of his attack, and then it was 1000% attack. You know what I mean. His ultimate was already and still is hitting really hard, so I can definitely see why it was warranted, especially for a free character. But yeah, gameplay came out. I saw his damage. Obviously, I had to wait till I tested myself to make a decision because, I can't really trust those kind of people playing the game sometimes. But yeah, I was super stoked. Finally, a single target DPS that revives Sparkle. That was like a 2-in-1 deal for me, and he's free, so a 3-in-1 deal. Originally, I didn't even want to go for any islands from what we knew, but I did see that, E1 will give you 2 skill points if you use skill 3 times, and you're usually always going to use skill 3 to 4 times. So I was like, damn, this actually seems like a pickup. I did want to pick up his E2. I have tested him at E1 and E2, also E0, but yeah, I did want to pick up E2, but I did reconsider later. But yeah, then we got to release, and oh my god, I was just right. He's so damn fun. He is so goddamn fun. Uses Sparkle perfectly. The damage output I can have him do on my account is absolutely wild. The level of single target DPS is absolutely shredding through. He can just kill a boss within 1 instance of skill. Not like actually like 1 shot with the skill, but 1 instance of skill, 3 to 4 shots, the boss is dead. Absolutely tears through the MLC currently. He tears through APOC. I've actually seen clears of people actually clearing in Pure Fiction with 40k score. So I need to test that myself. Unfortunately, I haven't gone around to trying it yet, but I do need to try that because I am very curious to see if I can do it. But an MLC, either half, Hule or the Bug right now is insane. He just destroys everything on the field. Everything he just decides to target, toggle on, big damage, big damage, big damage. They're dead. Ultimate, like 50% of the boss's HP or just kills an elite pretty much. Archer does so much damage, it is actually just insane. When I did get around to testing him at E0, he was still, perfect with his light cone, without his light cone. With his light cone, it's a pretty nice jump. It's pretty noticeable, but it's not like too crazy. But at E0 S0, he still did perform very nice. I still was able to zero cycle and stuff with him. At E0 S1, obviously it was a bit easier because his damage potential overall was good. The build-up you did need was not really an issue. He does start at good damage and then he ramps up to insanely good damage. So you have a good starting point and a fantastic ending point, so there's not really a downside to that. His damage just throughout the battle is a very strong and only gets better the more you shoot. And then once I did get him with the E1 to test that out, it definitely did make a pretty big difference getting that free shot, or you just use the SP to manage skill points. Doing 3, you're practically getting 2 back, so you practically just fired 3 shots for the price of 2. Or you can shoot an extra 1 after that, so you technically get 4 for the price of 3, and so on. Whether you want to hold those extra skill points you get back from E1 or just use them, it's going to be a big benefit regardless. So E1 was definitely a very nice point, and definitely probably the best stopping point. E1 S1, I think that's perfect for him. E0 S0, E0 S1, he's already, relatively a perfect character, but at E1 S1, he truly is a perfect character. I did test him by other means with E2, and personally, as much as I like seeing the ultimate do more damage and have that quantum induce onto the enemies, I'm not the biggest fan of it because his ultimate will usually kill an elite enemy anyways, so that quantum implant doesn't really get felt. And if you do use it on a boss, my biggest problem is when they phase transition, they're going to lose the implant anyways. And that ultimate does like 60% of the boss's HP at E2 especially. So you don't really get to feel it. That's my whole problem with it. And so I really think the uptime on it is just relatively bad. It's also for 2 turns, so if you do use it for the whole thing, it's kind of like harder to use. It's really good against a boss that just has 1 HP bar. So like Severog, he just has 1 big HP bar. Rather than 2 phases, it's like 2 phases just into 1. Or an upcoming boss that I won't spoil. If you know, you know. Big HP bar, but you don't really have to phase transition. That's when you really feel the strength of the E2. But outside of those situations, which anyways, 99% of the bosses will have a phase 2. That's why it's not really felt. So I am personally not going to go for it. As much as I wanted it, I'm not going to go for it. Just because it honestly doesn't feel that great. I don't even use Silver Wolf with him because I just prefer not to. But I honestly don't think I'm going to go for that E2 just because the uptime is relatively bad. But yeah, I've also tested him with multiple combinations of teams. I've used him with without Sparkle. I've used Hanya a bit with him. Not too much, but I've definitely seen more than I've used. I've used him without Sparkle or Hanya or even Sunday. I think I ran a comp of RMC, Ting Yun, and also Tribi, and it did so much damage still. All these combinations of actual supports, he just does a lot of damage. He has a relatively flexible amount of options, especially if you're good at managing skill points. If you play correctly and you manage skill points correctly, you probably don't even need Sparkle or Hanya. I've seen videos of this guy's zero cycle with like a 1 or 2 cost as well. So it is definitely very possible he has that potential. And the further you do get his teammates, you add Sparkle onto the team, you can add Cypher or Silverwolf or both, you can add the third slot be sustained or sustainless. He just does so much. He's so good at sustainless that his damage skyrockets with it. Just like any other DPS, of course, but it's still really good. The fact that he does sustain this really well, and he does utilize the fact that you are doing sustain this really well with his damage, is also great. I'm a fantastic and a lover of Zero Cycle, so he just performs really good. Even if you're doing sustain and you're not going for Zero Cycle, he's still going to do really consistent damage, and you can very much clear within 1 to 2 to 3 cycles with a decently invested in team, so a lot of people still can clear on the casual side at a very higher cycle amount. And if you're a Zero Cycler, you probably also love him as much as I do, because he is just insane. You're able to optimize low cost on him. You're able to optimize DDD setups on him. RMC works great with him as well. Better than I thought, actually. It was kind of insane when I saw the difference that RMC can do on some teams. But the most common team I use with him is Sparkle, Cypher, and Ruan Mei, just because of the investment I have on these characters to give me a good amount of defense ignore in total. And that's the one I see the most consistent damage on and the most consistent clears. But again, I've tried a multitude of different things, a bunch of teams, but that is the one I prefer the most. I personally just don't like using Silverwolf too much with him. But yeah, so my first impressions on him is I'm super happy with how he does. I'm super happy with how his kit was made. He is probably my second favorite DPS to use right now. I definitely do think, as of now, I have more fun with him than someone like Fei Xiao or Boot Hill. My Fei Xiao still very much can clear Zero Cycle and all that stuff on her team, but I think I have a lot more fun with Archer. He's definitely my second favorite DPS to use as of now. I'm going to hope he stays strong, and it's not going to be a ratio incident where he, just gets another character that uses the same thing, so potentially uses Sparkle as well, and just does what he does, but, more modernized. In the farm mode ratio, it was Face Shao, but you know, you at least had 2.0, or you at least had the second half of 1.6 all the way to 2.5 with Face Shao. So ratio still did have a long time. But you know, I hope Archer doesn't really get that direct thing, because I know you could technically run ratio as a hyper carry and it did better, especially when Sunday released instead, as opposed to running the follow-up team that you do with Face Shao. But you know, just a similar instance where another DPS that does the same thing and technically on the same slot on the team would replace. I'm gonna hope that doesn't happen, just because, you know, I want Archer to be usable as long as possible. I definitely think even in a bunch of patches from now, he's still gonna be usable if you invest in him, if you have a good team setup, if you play him right, he's gonna be really good. Let's just hope the meta doesn't shift back to completely shilling AoE, and even in shilling AoE, I think he's still gonna do good. Thanks to the fact that you can just, you know, swap skill, swap skill, swap skill, and so on. So I think he definitely does have a good long life, especially as a free unit ahead of him. I'm super happy with the performance. But yeah, that does wrap up my first impressions. If you guys are also enjoying him as much as I am, definitely let me know, because I want to see how many people are having that much fun as I am. I think he's one of the better units I've seen made in a while, and I'm going to keep using him for a long time. Performance in MOC, great. Easy 0 cycles. And APOC, especially the first half, great. So if they keep doing stuff like that, he's going to be absolutely insane, especially with his damage output in that mode. But yeah, let me know. Peace out.